The hell? They some island boys. They some island makers. Them motherfuckers lame as hell. Them niggas cannot rap. Alright, what's up, C? I'm late, man. Everybody was expecting me and shit. I'm finna play some music, man. And finna get right into this shit. Them niggas, they're a whole different breed. Them niggas, they're a whole different breed. Them island boy niggas. Them niggas with the shits, though. Finna get into this shit. Give me a couple minutes. Roll this blunt up.
I'm Chris Middleton with the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm here in LA visiting one of my favorite small businesses, Beauty Bees, by my sister Brittany. I love the store and everything, so, why'd you start it?
One day I was shopping for a wig with Grammy. We went to this local beauty supply down the street, actually near our house, and the experience was just horrible. No one was helping us. We left feeling completely unseen, disrespected. And so I wanted to create a space more where women of color could feel more seen and appreciated and understood and celebrated.
Supporting small minority business owners are extremely important because those are the businesses in our community that we need. Those are our neighbors.
Milky fella.
Billions. Mobs. Trill. Gon' smoke a million blunts, split them, fill them up. That sticky stuff, most smokers can't get enough. They smoke the blunts, took the doobie, some be quick to share. I fuck around, burn it down, big bags of weed everywhere. Sometimes I'm stingy with the sticky, got me choosing picky. It's oozing THC and CBD, blunt full of resin. When it come to smoking, nigga, I'm a connoisseur. If you running out, then go ahead and grab some more. Then grab a box of cigars from the corner store. That 3.5 of him guys of the ounce with the collectible jar. I'm blowing till it's all gone, but I'm still bagging. We legal now, we went from baggage to a Mylar pass. Let's smoke a million blunts. Let's smoke a million blunts. Break it down, fill it up. Took the side, roll it up. Light it up, take a puff. Let's smoke a million blunts. Hold on, my head in the clouds, I might need a doctor. Roll your windows up, I'm a professional hot boxer. When it come to sticky, no kush on the roster. I don't even know can roll more proper, okay. This nigga's blunt for my dog Anna. Break it down, face up, you know that's on $1. Chief, how many blunts you smoke today? Man, a whole lot of. I'm a whole grinder. Packing my drawers is blunt, a whole monster bus. Everybody around me got their own product. Walking too close, the aroma. Shorty, stop ya. Moon rocker, did I mention show stopping? What block hotter? Roll it all up, Slum City, you know we got it. Enough for that, let's keep it G. Enough blunts for a nigga to smoke a billion a piece, huh? Let's smoke a million blunts. Let's smoke a million blunts. Let's smoke a million blunts. Break it down, fill it up. Took the side, roll it up. Light it up, take a puff. Let's smoke a million blunts. Category 1 on the way. Chief Havoc, Luke Dog Trill.
Yeah, that's right, nigga.
Yeah, Mob. It's trill. Life of a motherfucking G. Life of a motherfucking G. I wake up in the morning, grab a sweet, roll up some weed, grab myself something to eat, grab my clip and my heat before I even brush my teeth. Fuck some toast, my hand on my toaster. I don't need a holster in this ghetto roller coaster. Ain't no seatbelt, ain't no receipt for these dirty streets. Niggas pay with their lives and they soul and they let free. Searching for cheese in a ghetto maze, set traps for thieves. Lay back with ease, stay with the strap, cause you gon' need it. Vultures looking for witnesses, swarm on you when they see it. In this jungle we live, Mortal Kombat fatally ends. Fakers and friends, the niggas who play to win. Saying they living a life of seeing all of their clips extend. Hoes selling pussy to kids, sticking a syringe in their skin. They say they serve and protect, they neglect and offend. Chances are slim, they dance with the devil just to make it. Walk with me, let me show you the life of a motherfucking G. Life of a motherfucking G. Fucking G. Fucking G. Well, some live, some die, caskets closed and mama's crying. Don't nobody here know why. It's the life of a motherfucking G. Now dust to dust, ash covers the grass. That's the last time you saw him. Headstones covers the home of the dearly departed. The clock started as soon as you were conceived. From the moment you started to breathe, you were appointed to lead the life you lead. From the baby bottles to bags of weed. Pour up some drink and use your brain. Don't believe what you see, only half of what you heard. Watch for what you believe. Extensive study for love and knowledge is that's what you gon' need. They got tricks up they sleeve. Niggas slick as slick can be. They overcome with greed, set up traps for a fee. Whack a nigga for his status, hopes of 1,000 P's. They don't have the ambition to come up with 100,000 G's. Your main squeeze gotta be bleak, your shit fucking your enemy. Your top dog might tell the people where you stashing your weed. Tell them where your money and coke at, then cop a plea agreement. The crooked shit that take place. The life of a motherfucking G. Life of a motherfucking G. Fucking G. Fucking G. Some live, some got caskets closed and mamas crying. Don't nobody here know why. It's the life of a motherfucking G. It's trio, nigga.
We finna get started.
That's right. Blue Dog motherfucking records. No limit forever, East little bitch. Know what it is. 900, nigga. I'm 900. Renegade Mob Outlaws. The Dirty South G-Funk. Delta Rap Blues. Well, some live, some die, cats it closed, the mamas cry. On the front row, all black, and they don't know why, dog. Life of a motherfucking G. Gangsta bitch, life of a motherfucking PK on my beat.
Yeah, man. Let me put this one song on so I can get right up in that bitch. And then it's going down. Yeah, hold up. Psycho Flow shit. They already know what's up. They already know what's up. After this here, I gotta open it up. This is how I open it up, man.
We believe it takes the right team to bring you fresh produce. That's why we partner with farmers who grow only the best. Because working together is truly what it takes to be fresh for everyone.
Yeah. There we go.
Organize these voices in my head, bring you that.
I will organize these voices in my head and bring you that.
It's ridiculous, so that the spirit is still in your body as soon as you hear it. When the energy that you affect you in charge of it, really they know that it's serious. When the people call out for the teaching, you gather the troops.
Raise up the experience.
It's the sacred, the secret,
For the streets.
underground, yeah, that's where the spirit is.
Organize the organization and a myriad of gentlemen.
Our accomplishments and what we wait for the new generation to spit how they want to spit. When we hustle, it's October, we get cash, credit, and checks. We have mastered respect. Our talents with amazing talents, commodities, sources, and assets. And on your mind, on your bed, or whatever liability you rock with. All the niggas you want to block with, stay with them soldiers, slime with them hockey sticks.
Rigged out psycho mode.
Shift up in the cockpit.
Psycho shit.
Nigga, I present to you this motherfucking psycho shit, bitch. It's that psycho flow. It's that book spirit in the music.
It's that psycho flow. It's the ancestors speaking through you, nigga. It's that psycho flow. This revolution make you scared, bitch. It's that psycho flow. Organize these voices in my head, bring you that.
Psycho flow. It's that book spirit in the music. It's that psycho flow. It's the ancestors speaking through you, nigga. It's that psycho flow.
Yeah.
This revolution make you scared, bitch.
Nah.
It's that psycho flow.
Okay.
Organize these voices in my head, bring you that.
Yeah, I'm ready now, nigga. Yeah, I done brought some shit in here with me. I'm good and ready now.
Organize these voices in my head, bring you that.
So shit, we finna get into this shit. So, man, I ended up coming in contact through the internet with some cold shit.
Organize these voices in my head, bring you that.
The most dangerous motherfucker. I didn't even know it was a such thing. And couldn't find out this man from somewhere in Tennessee. I done fucked around down on late. Let me run this bitch again. I know y'all gonna be done missed this hoe, but it's all good. Alright. So we finna go on to get into it. So yeah. It's loud on you. My fault. Over here, not loud, y'all. Nah, it ain't loud on my side, so that's my fault. It's my bad. Yeah, I would have been here at 9. I would have got everybody, but that's okay. Because everybody was trying to see who the fuck this person is, man. So we gonna get into this shit. This nigga, this shit right here tripped me the fuck out. Nah, it ain't that nigga there. It ain't none of them niggas. They show this man Yeah, this motherfucker, he built uranium and some more old shit. He actually did it on accident. Yeah, he became the most dangerous man in history on accident. He the reason niggas got bombs and all this shit. He the one. Yeah, he ain't do that shit on purpose. Where this nigga at, man? They gonna do me that way. Well, cool. It's alright. I gotta go to my what's-her-names. My what's-her-names. And all that good shit. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. I'm in the wrong one. Live and I'm live. I'm live and I'm live. This nigga. Oh, this fool killed the most people. This fool killed the most people in here. Yeah, he is the most dangerous nigga. Fuck we mean. Yeah, if he killed the most fucking people, he killed the most people in history, period. Yeah, he the most dangerous nigga. Okay, so I was right. Yeah, that's what that nigga is. That nigga a whole beast out here. And he did this shit on accident. From what I read, but this the video.
To the throat chakra line on the Vitruvian Man, indicating that where Da Vinci has left us another horizontal line.
I'm gonna fuck all Da Vinci, Galileo, all them lame ass, half-made ass theories them niggas got. I don't even fuck with none of that goofy shit. Silly ass shit.
One single scientist created 3 inventions that accidentally caused the deaths of millions of people, including himself. Not only that, they decreased the
for educational purpose, YouTube, so don't, yeah, you ain't got to put the copyright shit on there, you know. Yeah, let me do me.
average intelligence of people all around the world, increased crime rates, and caused 2 completely separate environmental disasters that we are still dealing with today. Part of this video is sponsored by Wren. More about them at the end of the show. In 1944, as a young chemist who had just finished his master's, Claire Patterson went to work on the Manhattan Project, building the first nuclear weapons. His job was...
Now, the Manhattan Project is an actual thing. The thing about this shit is, at some point, for years, this shit was only in the imagination of some people. They didn't know for a fact. There was no real official documents that was released yet. That was only back then in their time. So for some of them people, they didn't get the full confirmation that they needed until they was, pretty much headed out this bitch. They was already adults. At the time you could understand this shit, you was already a full grown adult or close to it. So fast forward year 2000, whatever, now you can access these different documents that was classified by the FBI back in the day, all these different 3-letter organizations, to where they was kind of playing you off. The whole conspiracy theory shit. So they would make you sound crazy. Oh, ain't no Manhattan Project. But yeah, here we go with the shit right here.
Concentrate uranium-235, the fissile fuel for bombs, from the much more common uranium-238. And this required huge machines, mass spectrometers, which separated the 2 types of uranium by their slight difference in mass. After the war, Patterson went back to grad school to get his PhD. He picked a research project that would take advantage of his experience with mass spectrometers, measuring the age of the Earth. Radioactive rocks are effectively clocks. Uranium-238, for example, decays into thorium, and then protactinium, and then 12 more decays, until it ends up as lead-206, which is stable. The rate of this decay is consistent and can be measured. It takes 4.5 billion years for half of a sample of U-238 to decay into lead-206. Patterson's PhD project was to determine the age of the Earth by measuring the ratio of uranium to lead in primordial rocks. But to calibrate his instrument, first he used zircon crystals whose ages were known. Zircon is ideal for this purpose because when it forms, it contains trace amounts of uranium, but absolutely no lead. So any lead that you later find inside a zircon, you know must be the product of a uranium decay. Patterson was tasked with measuring the lead content, and another student, George Tilton, measured uranium. Tilton's uranium measurements were fine. They matched predictions. But Patterson's lead measurements were all over the place, and they were many, many times higher than they expected.
We take George's uranium and my lead. Not right, Patterson. There was lead there that didn't belong there.
So where was all this extra lead coming from? That mystery would take over the rest of Claire Patterson's life and bring him to the literal ends of the Earth.
Interesting.
In 1908, a woman was driving across the Belle Isle Bridge in Detroit when her car stalled. A passing motorist stopped to help. In those days, cars needed to be hand-cranked to start. He knelt down and turned the crank, and the engine roared to life, a little too suddenly. The man couldn't get out of the way. The crank handle hit him in the face and broke his jaw. He died as a result of his injuries. His name was Byron Carter, and he was the founder of his own car company, so he was well connected in the Detroit auto scene. He counted among his close friends the founder of Cadillac, Henry Leland. Leland was so distraught over his friend's death that he resolved to eliminate hand cranks from his vehicles.
As CEO of my own pirate enterprise, I chose HubSpot as our CRM platform because it helps us treat customers like people.
Boy, that whole crazy.
Leland hired Charles Kettering to create a self-starting car, and by 1911, he had a working prototype.
Hand cranking was difficult and dangerous, and best left to men. But a car that started itself changed everything.
The world's first crankless car was the Cadillac Model 30. It was much more powerful than cars before it. It had a top speed of 45 miles per hour and 40 horsepower, double the Ford Model T. The Model 30 was a huge success for Cadillac, doubling the company's annual sales. But it had a problem. It was deafeningly loud. In internal combustion engines, a piston compresses the fuel-air mixture, which is then ignited by a spark from the spark plug. The expanding hot gases push the piston back down. The problem with the Model 30 engine was it compressed the fuel-air mixture more than previous models. So much, in fact, that often the fuel would spontaneously combust before the spark from the spark plug. So rather than orderly, perfectly timed explosions, you'd get multiple haphazard combustions leading to turbulent pressure waves inside the cylinder. The resulting sound led the problem to become known as engine knocking. Knocking wasn't just hard on the ears, it hurt the engine's performance. It reduced power output and lowered fuel efficiency. The vibrations also damaged the piston and walls of the cylinder, shortening the life of the engine. The good news was that engine knocking could be corrected by changing the fuel. Different fuels can withstand different levels of compression before detonating. N-heptane, for example, will spontaneously combust under only a little compression. Isooctane, on the other hand, can withstand a much higher compression ratio before it auto-ignites, so it's much less likely to cause knocking. To quantify how much compression a fuel can withstand, scientists came up with the Octane Rating system. They arbitrarily set isooctane to have a rating of 100 and N-heptane a rating of 0. Now, real fuels aren't made up of only these two ingredients. They're a mix of lots of different hydrocarbons, but the octane rating tells you what mixture of octane and heptane gives equivalent performance. For example, 98 octane fuel can withstand the same compression as a mixture of 98% octane and 2% heptane. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of 98 octane fuel and put it in this piston, and when I compress it, nothing happens, which is exactly what you'd expect. This fuel can withstand a lot of compression. Diesel has an octane rating of 20, so it acts like a mixture of 20% isooctane and 80% in heptane. If I put a little bit of diesel in there, let's see what happens with the same compression ratio.
Okay.
There you go. You get a little explosion in there. That's because this is a low-octane fuel. I mean, that's what diesel's meant to do. You compress it and it ignites. But you don't want this sort of fuel in an engine with spark plugs. The reason fancy cars demand high-octane fuel is to prevent knocking in their high-compression, high-performance engines. Kettering wanted to find an additive which would increase the octane rating of ordinary fuel and eliminate knocking in high-compression engines. So he hired 27-year-old engineer Thomas Midgley Jr. Midgley experimented with all sorts of compounds from
So, whenever y'all do catch this live or watch this video, y'all see a lot of people be like, shit, with they luxury cars, they foreign cars, they only put 92 in that bitch. Certain cars, the whole meaning behind the reason for having the different charts, the different levels of the octane, basically. Shit, there you go right there.
butter and camphor to ethyl acetate and aluminum chloride. He later wrote most of them had no more effect than spitting in the Great Lakes. Ethanol was an interesting exception. It did stop the knocking, but you needed a lot of it, about 10% of the fuel mixture for it to be effective. That much ethanol would be expensive and hard to turn a profit on. And Midgley was really after an additive that was cheap, easy to produce, and effective even at low concentrations. So he kept trying. Then he hit on tellurium. It worked wonderfully as an anti-knock agent, but it had a terrible smell. You couldn't get rid of it by changing clothes or bathing. His wife was so offended by the stench that he had to sleep in the basement for 7 months.
Hold up, G. Wait a minute, pimpin'. Say, man, why you put the man in the goddamn basement, though? Like, what's the real deal? Say, this nigga couldn't get one of the rooms in the back, though. He was stinking like that, though. He gonna disrespect this man. He paying the bills. He and this motherfucker trying to keep y'all safe. And it's because this nigga stank a little bit. Nah, I'm just bullshitting. He was stinking. I already know she gonna put that nigga in the basement.
Midgley wrote, I don't think that, although this doubled the fuel economy, humanity would suffer this smell. On December 3rd, 1921, after 5 years of working on the problem, Midgley found what he thought was the perfect solution. Tetraethyl lead. That's a lead atom right there in the center. This additive was exactly what he was looking for. It stopped the knocking, it didn't smell, it was cheap to produce and readily available. Best of all, you only needed 1 part in 1,000 for it to be effective. In a call to Kettering, Midgley said, can you imagine how much money we're going to make with this? We're going to make $200 million, maybe even more. That is over $3 billion in today's dollars. Now, for his discovery, the American Chemical Society gave him the prestigious Nichols Award, and they asked him to do a series of public talks, but Midgley declined. He and Kettering patented the process for making tetraethyl lead, and they called their new additive ethyl, perhaps so it might be confused with another common additive, ethyl alcohol. They made no mention of lead. Then they teamed up with 3 of America's largest corporations, General Motors, DuPont, and Standard Oil of New Jersey, to form the Ethyl Corporation. Their marketing was brilliant.
No man can look at the amazing record of accomplishment here in this research division without confidence that these men are going ahead with an eye to the future, looking for new facts and principles which will make things better and make life easier for all of us.
So I'm going to open up PayPal.
So right now I got $19,000 in my PayPal. And let's go to the activity, and you guys can see the social DM sent me the money. Hey guys, in this video, I'm...
At the 1923 Indianapolis 500, the top 3 finishers all used ethyl, and the demand for leaded gasoline took off. To keep up, Ethyl Corporation had to build a new chemical plant in New Jersey, but the project began terribly. Within 2 months of operating, dozens of workers fell ill with lead poisoning. 5 of them died. To address the public outcry, Midgley held a press conference, and there he poured tetraethyl lead onto his hands, and he inhaled it for a full minute. He claimed he could do this daily without harm. But Midgley knew the dangers. The reason he had turned down the public talks was because he spent much of 1923 in Florida, where he himself was recovering from lead poisoning. He didn't go anywhere near his company's product if he could.
This nigga man, this nigga here. We might need to call him the most trifling nigga in the world. You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna be real about the shit, he might be the most trifling nigga in history, but I don't know though. We'll have to do some further research on that. That really wasn't the subject I was looking for. Who was the most trifling motherfucker? But hey, it's all good.
Help it. Lead is dangerous even in small doses. It mimics calcium in our bodies, so there's no efficient way to get rid of it. And like calcium, lead can be stored in bones for years, meaning it can continue to poison the body long after the initial exposure. The organ most sensitive to lead is the brain. Lead breaks down the myelin sheath around axons.
Oh, snaps. Okay. So the whole thing about that is peep game. Well, back in the 70s and shit, 70s and 80s and early 90s, it was this thing about the whole lead poisoning and shit for our generation as young children and shit. So basically they was saying like they was putting lead in the water and it was dumbing motherfuckers down. It was fucking with their brain the way they was developing and shit. And what ended up happening was they ended up supposedly altering the shit. Which fluoride, that shit ain't no better. Fluoride fuck your brain up too. So after that, what ended up happening was then we started getting these cases of ADHD and all this different shit. You know what I'm saying? All this different shit pop up. But it's connected, what people believe directly, to the goddamn lead and shit. Supposedly. But here it go right here.
It's the release of neurotransmitters. That's why common symptoms of lead poisoning are headaches, memory loss, and tingling in the hands and feet. And children are particularly susceptible. Lead exposure can cause permanent learning disorders and behavioral problems. And the dangers of lead had been known for hundreds of years. Already in 1786, Benjamin Franklin remarked that lead had been used for far too long, considering its known toxicity. You will observe with concern how long a useful truth may be known and exist before it is generally received and practiced on. He would have been aghast to learn that nearly 150 years later, scientists planned to add lead to fuel. Doctors and public health officials from MIT, Harvard, Yale, and the U.S. Health Service wrote to Midgley and warned them against producing tetraethyl lead. They called lead a creeping and malicious poison and a serious menace to public health. Their concerns were dismissed.
This model shows how just the right amount of fluid containing tetraethyl lead and dye is added to the gasoline.
No one doubted that a lot of lead was bad for you, but how much harm could a little lead do? By the 1950s, millions of motorists globally were burning lead in their cars and releasing it into the air. Some of that lead ended up on Claire Patterson's zircon samples, preventing him from determining their age. In 1952, he moved to Caltech, where he built a new lab from scratch. Suspicious of environmental contamination, he tore the electrical cables out of the walls to remove the lead solder. He cleaned the floors and benches daily with ammonia and made sure that air was always being blown out of the lab. To go inside, you had to wear a plastic bunny suit. Patterson basically invented the clean room. Inside that room, he turned his attention to the oldest rocks in the solar system, meteorites. All the original rocks on Earth had long since been destroyed by tectonic activity. But meteorites come from asteroids, which formed around the same time as Earth. They have just been drifting through space until they entered the Earth's atmosphere. So the best way to measure the age of the Earth was to measure the age of meteorites. Patterson measured 5 meteorites, each with 3 different radiometric dating techniques, and he found they were all 4.55 billion years old. That number is within 0.15% of the currently accepted value for the age of the Earth. Before Patterson's experiment, people thought the Earth was 1 billion years younger. So Patterson had done it. He measured the age of the Earth. But he wasn't done getting rid of lead contaminants. Public concern about lead exposure had continued to grow. But President of Standard Oil, Frank Howard, pushed back, saying, "We do not feel justified in giving up what has come to the industry like a gift from heaven on the possibility that a hazard may be involved in it." Scientists funded by the Ethel Corporation claimed that lead was a natural part of our environment and therefore not harmful to people. But Patterson wondered, just how natural is the lead in our environment? And he had just the skills to find out.
There are 2 types of lizard or reptilian kind of beings. When they appear on Earth, they try to do it covertly. Some come from a totally different reality. Others come from different planets. They all have their own agenda.
When we had EBA 1 in captivity from 1947, 1952, one of the big questions was, do you have a soul? EBA 1 said, absolutely I have a soul. It is eternal.
There are phenomena.
This whole alien thing, that's another thing. But I ended up finding out what's really going on. I've been saying that it was people who've been around forever, and they're still around. You dig me? And today I did some research on the Orishas, and I went real deep into the shit and found out that I was actually right. You feel me? So we're gonna end up getting down to it in the future, little, But that nigga there.
He began by measuring lead in the oceans. If it were natural, he expected the concentration of lead to be the same regardless of depth. But if lead pollution had increased recently, it would be more concentrated near the surface. He took samples in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans down to a depth of 4 kilometers. And sure enough, lead concentrations were nearly 10 times higher near the surface. Lead pollution was clearly recent, but when exactly had it occurred? To find out, Patterson had to go to Greenland and Antarctica. Ice cores record the level of lead in the air going back thousands of years. The levels of lead in the atmosphere have been elevated for the last 4,500 years. All of it is due to human activity, mainly smelting ores to make metal. You can see the rise and fall of the Greek and Roman empires, the dip caused by the Black Death in the 1300s, and of course the spike in the 20th century due to industrialization and tetraethyl lead. So what did this do to people? Well, Patterson looked at the lead levels in the teeth and bones of recently deceased Americans, and for comparison, he measured the lead in bones and teeth of Peruvian and Egyptian mummies. Since they lived over 1,600 years ago, they would have been exposed to much less lead in their lifetimes. He expected to find modern Americans had about 100 times as much lead in their bones, but results showed it was closer to a factor of 1,000. 20th century Americans had 1,000 times more lead in their bones than their ancestors.
Damn.
Studies of baby teeth revealed that even lead exposure well below the level considered safe resulted in delayed learning, decreased IQ, and increased behavioral problems.
And there's a broad consensus on the part of everybody except the lead industry and its spokesman that lead is extremely toxic at extremely low doses.
A follow-up study showed that those with higher levels of lead in their baby teeth were many times more likely to fail out of high school. As a result of studies like these, the CDC's
Damn, see, I was just saying that. So I'm going to end up doing a video in the future where I'm going to end up breaking down that whole thing. Which I already had looked into it. And what I had found out was, yeah, it's some real shit. The fluoride, the lead, all kind of shit in the water right now that we drink. That's why they say the best water to get is spring water. Especially spring water in the spring close to where you originate, where you were born. So wherever you was born back home, I'm from Arkansas. So basically, we got natural springs. We actually have hot geysers. It's an actual city that's full of geysers. It's one of the only cities in America that's full of geysers, and it's called Hot Springs, Arkansas, basically because it's full of fresh, hot mineral water and spring water. So yeah, this shit real out here.
Guidelines for the acceptable level of lead in children's blood dropped from 60 micrograms per deciliter down to 3.5. And as far as we know today, there is no safe level of lead. Globally, lead is believed to be responsible for nearly 2/3 of all unexplained intellectual disability.
See what I mean? So this nigga, man, see what I mean? A lot of people will look at them and be like, nah, he was dangerous as fuck. This shit not only kill people, stay in your motherfucking body after you done consumed it for years and years, but if you a what I like to call a little person, because they little people, even though we call them babies and children and shit, but they people too. They ain't stupid, they ain't crazy, they ain't ignorant, they as smart as we is, they just ain't big enough yet to fully understand it. That's why we in our life, that's why we in their life, to basically train them into the understanding, but they already know everything they need to know pretty much by the time they get here. That's why they be realer than some adults. You ask a goddamn kid something, they gonna tell your ass the truth. Yeah, mama, she ugly. Yeah, they gonna tell you, yeah, daddy, look at that person. Yeah, they know what the fuck going on. You just gotta rear them, you know what I'm saying, so that they won't be dysfunctional with the shit. But yeah, this is leading to some of the causes of what they say, the little people getting these goddamn brain malfunctions. What I was just saying before he said it, but I'm gonna let him finish though.
In 2022, more than half of the current U.S. population, that's 170 million people, were exposed to high levels of lead in early childhood. Those born between 1951 and 1980 are disproportionately affected. The authors estimate that in aggregate, lead caused a loss of more than 800 million IQ points. The world is less intelligent today because of leaded gasoline. But there are even more troubling correlations. The U.S. saw a steady rise in crime from the 1970s to the 1990s.
Okay, now it makes sense. And then I'm going to let the video do its thing. But as I'm seeing this shit, this is a video breakdown. You know what I'm saying? This ain't one of my just regular little lectures where I'm just bringing it all full, you know. This is me seeing what something I seen that I want to break down and give an understanding while getting an understanding on the shit. But yeah, so motherfuckers know what all this shit linked to. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I know for sure when I looked at the shit, they were saying that they was intentionally putting up in the motherfucking water and in the food and the different things, the air and shit. But yeah, they know what they doing. Because if it ain't no crime, they don't need no police and they don't need armies and they don't... Yeah. So what if it's some different things that I can do, which we gonna uncover that shit is true, especially with certain communities, where motherfuckers intentionally do shit in order to put a spike in the motherfucking violence, violent crimes, aggravated robbery, attempted murder, assaults. They do this shit on purpose. For instance, check this out. A couple years ago, man, this motherfucking chicken sandwich came out from churches. Now, when this chicken sandwich came out, now see, I was already hip to the shit. Cause see, I'm abstract. So I like the weird shit. So man, I remember Boondocks. If anybody ever watched the show Boondocks, I remember on Boondocks they had an episode called like the Mad Chicken Flu or some shit. So in this episode, at this time, we wasn't aware of this shit. But in this episode, what ended up happening is the people ended up going to motherfucking, I don't even know if it was Church's or Popeyes. If they said it may have been a similar name, they may have did a play on the name, but in any rate, the motherfuckers was basically going to the chicken store, right? So they ended up getting to the chicken store. They sitting in line forever. So out of nowhere, fights just start breaking out. Niggas just start wigging out. They just start wigging out of the chicken. They ended up getting the chicken, going even crazier, to the point where, man, they had to shut down the whole goddamn nation in the cartoon. Obama, they didn't literally say it was Obama, but they had a black president on there. No, it was Obama. Cause yeah, it was motherfucking Obama in that episode. And that nigga was in his underground bunker like cooling though. So basically, in our reality, that whole chicken sandwich, that motherfucker was a straight nuclear bomb in a bun. I end up reading and checking up on the ingredients, and they say that the ingredients in that Church's chicken sandwich create anxiety, it create aggression and depression. Now what you want a mad, sad, motherfucker aggressive person? That's what you want to deal with? And that's what was happening. To the point where, if anybody remember, that Church's chicken shit, that chicken sandwich shit, through them whole couple years that shit was going, man, niggas was getting their ass whooped in Popeyes. And was it Church's or was it Popeyes? I don't remember. Popeyes Church, it may have been Popeyes. Niggas was getting their ass whooped up in that bitch. Niggas was getting blasted up in that bitch. Like they was really tripping. But it was in the sandwich. Yeah, so they know what they doing. They doing this shit intentionally. We gonna end up getting really getting to the bottom of some shit.
Then it abruptly declined. This graph looks eerily similar to a plot of preschool blood lead levels, just offset by 20 years. The obvious question is, did kids who were exposed to higher levels of lead grow up to commit more crimes than they otherwise would have? You might think this is just a spurious correlation, but the same pattern appears in many countries, including Britain, Canada, and Australia. And we know there's a causal connection between lead exposure and antisocial or violent behavior. A study of 340 teenagers found that those who were arrested were 4 times as likely to have elevated lead in their bones than similar demographic controls who didn't have run-ins with the law. Now, this doesn't mean that lead is responsible for all of the increase in crime, but it's very likely responsible for some of it. Now, it's tough to estimate the precise death toll of lead. One of its lesser-known effects is a hardening of the arteries, leading to increased cardiovascular disease. A study from 2018 found lead was likely responsible for 250,000 heart disease deaths per year in the U.S. Assuming a constant rate over the past century, that amounts to 25 million deaths in the U.S. alone. Globally, the figure may approach 100 million. Most of those deaths are due to Midgley's decision to put lead in gasoline, a substance he knew firsthand was toxic, but he did it anyway to maximize profits. And the problem is not over. Current estimates of deaths caused by lead range from 500 to 900,000 per year. The 2020 UNICEF report warns that 1 in 3 children globally, that's over 800 million children, have blood lead levels at or above 5 micrograms per deciliter.
Damn.
A lot of this lead now comes from batteries and industrial processes, but some is still due to Midgley's invention. After Midgley's success with Ethel, he was put in charge of another engineering project. GM wasn't just making cars, but also household appliances. And fridges had a problem. The 2 most common gases used as refrigerants were methyl formate and sulfur dioxide. One is highly toxic, the other is flammable. Midgley was tasked with creating a safer alternative, and in 1928 he developed a non-toxic and non-flammable refrigerant, dichloro-difluoromethane. GM called this new product Freon. And to demonstrate Freon's safety, during the unveiling at the American Chemical Society, Midgley inhaled a lungful of this gas and
What's
blew
up
out.
with this nigga inhaling everything? I mean, y'all look real quick. I mean, I just gotta speak on this shit. Like, why this nigga wanna inhale everything, though? I'm thinking this was the kind of nigga that was huffing glue and shit back in junior high. What the fuck is up with all this inhaling?
Candle. In the following decades, CFCs like Freon became very popular and were used as solvents and aerosols. The problem is CFCs are light and stable. When released into the atmosphere, they climb
that's all he trying to
into
do.
the stratosphere, where they can remain for 50 to 100 years. But if a CFC molecule is hit by an ultraviolet photon of just the right energy, it breaks apart, releasing a chlorine atom. And this chlorine atom can then react with ozone, breaking it apart into chlorine monoxide and oxygen gas. The result was another environmental disaster, the hole in the ozone layer. With less ozone, more UV light penetrates the atmosphere, increasing the rates of skin cancer and cataracts. Plus, CFCs are potent greenhouse gases. Per kilogram, they produce 10,000 times more warming than CO2. The historian John McNeill wrote that Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history.
Damn.
An agreement to phase out CFCs, the Montreal Protocol, went into effect in 1980.
Okay, so it's official. This nigga like a god of destruction. This nigga official. I gotta give him his credit, man. He's a crooked motherfucker. I don't think he did it on purpose. I don't know if he did it on purpose. I don't know. But yeah, he did. Cause he did. He wanted us all getting high off that shit. And he huffing it. He motherfucker inhaling it every chance he get. We know that because we know they don't know nothing about space. But we gonna let him run his shit. We know they don't know shit about no motherfucking space. See, me and you know, you feel me, that this motherfucker don't know nothing about space. They ain't ever been to no fucking moon. They never been into space, actually. They only been in the low Earth orbit. They admitted it themselves. It's recorded. It's some NASA document type shit. Yeah. So we're gonna let him run his game, his little lies and shit, but that's part of why I need to debunk this shit, break it down, and do all that anyway.
And the ozone layer is now showing signs of recovery, although it'll take many more decades to fully recover. In 1940, at the age of 51, Midgley contracted polio and became physically disabled. So to help him get up, he devised a mechanical bed controlled by a series of ropes and pulleys. On November 2nd, 1944, while using the contraption, he became tangled in the ropes and died of strangulation. Thanks to the work of Claire Patterson, it became clear that the lead in our environment is not natural. Burning lead in combustion engines spread the toxic element across the planet, into the air, oceans, the snow at the South Pole, and even our bones. Japan was the first to ban leaded fuel in cars in 1986, but other countries soon followed suit. Algeria was the last to do so in 2021. The UN calculates that the elimination of lead from gas saves over 1 million lives per year and $2.45 trillion. But leaded gas is still used, by the way, in piston-driven airplane engines. That's now the largest source of lead emissions into the air in the U.S. You will observe with concern how long a useful truth may be known and exist before it is generally received and practiced on.
Okay, yeah, that shit was crazy. That shit was crazy, man.
When I first learned about Thomas Midgley and Claire Patterson, I was amazed by how much harm or how much good a single person could do to the environment. Which brings me to the sponsor of this video, WREN, an organization that's taking action on climate change. I think it's important that we tackle the climate crisis both by lobbying for systemic change and by making more environmentally friendly choices ourselves. On WREN's website, you can calculate how much carbon you emit and which activities have the greatest impact. And if you like, you can offset your emissions through a monthly subscription. The funds raised go to support a variety of projects that reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. One project I particularly like involves collecting up flammable dead wood from California forests. This helps prevent wildfires. Plus, the collected wood is converted into biochar, a material that locks up the carbon inside for thousands of years. Once you sign up to offset your carbon footprint, you'll receive monthly updates from the projects you support. It's completely transparent with photos and details of every tree planted, every acre reforested, every ton of carbon offset. And for the first 100 people who sign up using the link in the description, I will personally pay for the first month of your subscription. So I want to thank Ren for supporting Veritasium, and I want to thank you for watching.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, what does the serpent do? What, and not only that, but why is the serpent's punishment to crawl on its belly when that's what it does? If you don't know how to read biblical poetry, if you don't know the formal qualities of parallelism and expansion, you are missing out on 1/3 of the Hebrew Bible. Whatever theological background you have, you're going to have your own hypothesis, that is to say, your own plot and narrative. What the literary reading allows you to do is to find new details that work within that overall plot or narrative. Now the question becomes...
Reached the highest rank in the church, worship Satan. It's Ollie from History Profiles. In this video, I will give you the details of Pope Boniface VIII's life. This video may have you questioning reality. How could a man that has reached the highest rank in the church worship Satan? Let's get into the video and find out. First, let's look at his early life. Pope Boniface's birth name is Benedetto Caetani, and he was born in 1230 in Anagni, an ancient town just south of Rome. He was born into the upper class. His family were barons of the Papal States, so growing up, Benedetto would have had an advantage. He was soon sent to the monastery of the Friars Minor, where he would learn Latin and grow knowledgeable in religious texts. Benedetto was a man of ambition and wanted to progress and make his mark on the world. He managed to land a job as a secretary to Cardinal Simon de Brion. Now, a cardinal is the most senior member of the clergy to the Catholic Church, being second only to the Pope himself. Now, being the secretary was nothing like being a secretary today. He had to travel with the cardinal all over Europe. In 1265, Benedetto would make his way all around Europe and would remain in England until 1268 in order to try to stop a rebellion against King Henry III of England. After 1268, the trail on Benedetto's life goes missing. Nothing is known of his whereabouts or what he was doing during this time. For 8 years, he disappears from history. He reappears in 1276, where he was sent to France to supervise the collection of a payment that was intended for the church. Benedetto had been sent around Europe, had done several jobs for the church without question, and now his time had come. On the 12th of April, 1281, Pope Martin IV made Benedetto a cardinal. He was now a powerful member of the church, but was it enough for him? As the years went by and the popes came and went, Benedetto had his eyes set on one thing, and that was the papal throne. On the 13th of December, 1294, Pope Celestine V abdicated after 5 months as pope. Now this was very unusual. Bartholomew of Lucca, a medieval historian, witnessed many of the events and conversations surrounding the abdication of Pope Celestine, and recounted that Benedetto heavily pressured the Pope to abdicate. Why did the Pope relinquish his power and go against his own human nature? Did he do it as he was pressured by those beneath him, or was something more sinister at work? Soon after Pope Celestine abdicated, Benedetto was then elected as Pope and took the name of Pope Boniface VIII. One of his first acts as Pope was to grant his predecessor the castle of Furnon, where he would die the next year. Rumours would spread around Europe that something dark was surrounding the papacy, as all the events leading to Pope Boniface's ascension just seemed too convenient. Peasants and kings alike would talk and implicate Boniface in the demise of the former pope. Asserting power came to Boniface naturally. He would often involve himself in foreign affairs, as he wanted to be recognized as supreme and above all the kings of Europe. This message was conveyed in a papal bull which he issued called the Unam Sanctum. This document stated, "Since the Church is one, since the Church is necessary for salvation, and since Christ appointed Peter to lead it, it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman Pope." Many kings of Europe now saw the Pope as a man who was drunk on power and who came to the papal throne through questionable means. The Church was divided, and the illusion of power that protected the Pope was diminishing due to the dark aura that surrounded his rule. The Pope was making enemies all over Europe. The Prince of Germany and Philip, the King of France, both questioned and disputed his so-called supremacy over them. Pope Boniface would also make enemies in his own camp. In 1297, the Pope excommunicated a cardinal from the College of Cardinals, which would lead to a bitter feud. The former cardinal, whose name was Giacomo Colonna, accused the Pope of having been elected illegally following the unprecedented abdication of Pope Celestine V. These accusations infuriated the Pope and led to war. Colonna's revolt, however, was in vain. He was captured within a year. Under the command of the Pope, he had Palestrina and other towns that had revolted razed to the ground, even after their surrender and the Pope's assurance that they would be spared. Even the highest ranking of the Church would give false promises and lack
the leap of faith. Some hesitate.
Lack forgiveness and empathy. There was also a rivalry between Pope Boniface and King Philip of France due to the power struggle between Pope and King. King Philip wanted the wealth of the Catholic Church in France to stay in France and would pass laws to stop the export of gold, silver, and precious stones from France to the Papal States. This was the start of a long-lasting feud that would expose the Pope as a tyrannical man and also maybe something far more dark. The Pope would issue another papal bull named Ausculta Fili. This document conveyed that King Philip of France should listen to the Vicar of Christ as the spiritual monarch who stood above all earthly kings. The document would reach King Philip of France, and upon reading it, he threw it into a fire. Pope Boniface, however, underestimated King Philip. In the shadows, Philip was plotting the downfall of the Pope. He gathered lawyers, magistrates, high-ranking church officials who all opposed the Pope. He also had witnesses ready to testify against him. King Philip was so brazen that he even sent an army to arrest the Pope. The grounds of the arrest were enough to convince the people that this Pope had to be deposed and face trial. There had been talk around Europe for years surrounding the Pope, and many believed the charges, and there were many. I shall now read out the charges. He has often said that if nothing else could be done to humble the king and the French, he would ruin himself, the whole world, and the whole church. He has a private demon whose advice he follows in all things, and this is publicly known. He is a soothsayer who consults in oracles, and this is publicly known. He is a sodomite and keeps concubines, and this is publicly known. He is seeking to destroy the faith. He has long harboured an aversion against the King of France, because in France there is and ever was the splendour of the faith, the grand support and example of Christendom. It is notorious that the Holy Land has been lost as a result of his sins. It is notorious that he seeks not the salvation of souls, but their perdition. These charges were merely everything the public was thinking. They believed he had schemed with the devil to rise to the top of the church and had practiced the dark arts in order to commune with the devil who helped him.
Man, that's the Baphomet.
Many thought that the devil
I'm gonna
had
break
taken
all this
command
shit
of
down
the
too,
church.
man. Cause I'm sick of all these motherfuckers running the devil and whatnot. Niggas always gotta do some extra ass shit. Niggas always gotta do some shit to add to the suspense and shit. Yeah, but in reality, man, Pan, all of the hooved, you know what I'm saying, guys and shit, and nah, man. I'm gonna get to that though.
Due to its ongoing corruption. In 1303, an army was assembled, led by King Philip's minister, Nogaret. A ghost would also come back to haunt the Pope, as Sciarra Colonna, the relative of the disgraced Cardinal Giacomo Colonna, had joined the army, seeking vengeance. The army attacked the Pope at his palace in Anagni. The Pope was soon arrested and placed into the custody of Nogaret. The Colonna family demanded the Pope's resignation. For the first time in history, the supreme authority of the Pope was diminished and the illusion of power was unveiled. The Pope was treated as your common criminal would have been back then and was beaten, slapped, and humiliated. However, the people of Anagni rose up in arms and freed the Pope. He would make his way back to Rome, but died shortly after, on the 11th of October, just 1 month after his arrest. He died before his trial. We shall never know what the outcome would have been, or if he would have confessed. Without a doubt, there was a darkness surrounding the rule of Pope Boniface, and his death before his trial seems very convenient. He wronged many people, and was also addicted to power, and would like to remind the kings he saw as beneath him. So what do you think? Do you think that the Pope and the devil co-ruled the church?
Yeah, that's some
Let me know what
crazy
you
ass
think in
shit.
the comment section down below.
That's
And
some
make sure
crazy
to
shit
like,
right there.
subscribe, and share. Bye.
Might do another, man. Damn, I might, that whole Gundy thing and that Mother Teresa thing. Boy, we gonna get on that shit too. But, I'll be on this motherfucker. Nah, I need to separate that shit. Yeah, it's some crazy shit. Oh, yeah, and partner who shot up the police station after them niggas did that to his buddy. Yeah, the police, killed his homeboy, man. He came on back with some shit. But, yeah, we gonna get into all that shit. So, yeah, that was it. That was, I just went through that other one in because I thought that was crazy as hell. I thought that was interesting though. Satanic Pope. I'm sure it was more than just him who was with the shits. They said that nigga had concubines. That nigga was wigging. You know what I'm saying? That nigga was doing the most. See, I might have to look that up too. Say the nigga was consulting a demon. Hey man, I'm like this right here. I read the Proverbs and the Songs of Solomon, man. Solomon wasn't no joke. So, people don't understand this shit be real. But, you consulting them though. But I'm interested. I might look it up. Might not need to even fuck with it, but I'm like, damn. Who was this that was all in his head? Why he trying to run the church? What time period was this? What was going on? Was it wars going on as a result of this shit? I'm gonna look into that shit more. Because I'm sure the fact that nigga was doing what he was doing, that's that nigga though. You dig that? Solomon, yeah. Yeah, that's the truth right there. The master magician, the grand mastermind, the originator. Yeah. So that shit was real. A lot of people don't believe it, but that shit was real. That shit is in a lot of different mythos about how Solomon was ruling, nigga. Demons, angels, with certain sigils, but we'll get into that too. That's the higher, everybody ain't supposed to be fucking with. But I'm gonna get into just some of it because they go back into my whole Ethiopian Christianity Rome thing. It's in some of them books that was left out. It's a lot of shit in them books that was left out that if people put side by side with other books, with other myths from other religions and other regions in that area where people was worshiping gods and similar gods, because everybody over there wasn't even worshiping the same God. It was opposing gods. People was fighting you in the name of their God. So you'll end up getting into that too. But yeah, that's dude. He is that nigga there. He really was. If he not the most dangerous, he up there. He one of the most dangerous. Who was getting permission to kill other people? Who break that shit? Yeah, put that. Don't say that there. And let me see though. Who was getting permission from God to kill people? Because God have gave permission to people, plenty of people. Yeah, real shit. Yeah, God gave permission to plenty of people. Actually, honestly, and yeah, okay, yeah, for sure. I can definitely see that. But it wasn't just him, but I can definitely see that. Yeah. And then, cause see, check this out. They said he had the most peaceful reign as a king, but they said it's because when he first became king, he killed he just went on and did that. Like, anybody say my name, handle it. You hear something fucked up about me, do that for me. They say he killed all his father's enemies and all of his. That's why I say anytime the motherfuckers see your seed, they supposed to see that fear again. They supposed to see that shit. But that's some warrior shit, y'all. My fault. They supposed to see that shit and be like, we thought we got rid of that nigga. No, bitch, I multiplied. That shit. But yeah, dude is close to one of the most, if he not the most dangerous, the nigga up there. He did some incredibly destructive shit that people I don't know about in certain ways, but they don't know who that shit attributed to. Who the motherfucker, who or what or why. This nigga was compared to like a force of nature. They was like, they couldn't even describe anything close to it to the point where they said organism. They just went on through him in that shit for real shit. We don't even know what to say right now. You know what I'm saying? Type shit. So that was that. And I threw in that satanic pope shit because I was like, that's some crazy shit. They go back into my whole thing about Rome too at that time. What was really happening? Was this one of them times where Christianity was a thing? Was this one of them times where this should have been actually not even looked at bad as far as they concerned, because they was worshiping them. They ancient gods is like Pan and all these different, you know what I'm saying? That's not nothing to them. This people forget what they was actually on, what they was on for real. Yeah, it was in a polytheism. Multiple gods, Zeus, Athena, yeah. So this shit ain't nothing new. So it just makes you wonder, was that the thing? Was that the case? Was that going on then? Should people even look at it like that? Because motherfuckers like to demonize now, and they like to do it to where it's like, oh, that's God, oh, that's the devil, oh, this, man, we gotta be specific with the shit. Now with this one specific pope, by historical record, what this nigga detailing, what he's speaking, is, yeah, that's what this nigga was on. Nigga was with the shits. And he was ruling his people that way. But yeah, we gonna for sure dive into some more shit, touch on some more shit, and for sure I'm gonna be doing this a little more often. But yeah, I just had to go and bring them specific ones and go on in this live, man.